Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the joint public hearing meeting, April 8, 2024. I will call this meeting to order. This is a joint meeting with the Planning Board and the Board of Commissioners for the purpose of conducting a public hearing. First, we need the approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Commissioner Miles, thank you. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. The request for conditional zoning for 1.19 acres parcel for R2 residential suburban to GCC general commercial conditioning. We'll hold all your questions after the staff has made their presentation. And staff, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Farrell. I'm Planner 2 with the town of Zebulon. I know we have some new planning board members, so I just wanted to introduce myself as well as to everyone in the audience. I'm just going to go through the process real quick for tonight's public hearing. So staff will provide a general overview of the request, and then the applicant will have their chance to provide any details or anything else that they want to point out about their request. And then it's the opportunity for the Board of Commissioners to ask any clarifying questions, and then the Planning Board will be able to ask any clarifying questions that they have. And then the mayor will have the opportunity to open the joint public hearing. The public will be asked to make any comments at that time, and then these comments will be any comments that pertain to this particular case that's being presented tonight, and then the mayor will close the joint public hearing. Just a couple of rules. The public hearing is the opportunity for the public to express thoughts, ideas, concerns, and opinions regarding the proposed request to the Board of Commissioners and the Planning Board. And the Board of Commissioners, Planning Board staff, and applicant will not engage in dialogue at this time. If the public has questions pertaining to the development, please contact town staff or the applicant following the joint public hearing. So with all of that being said, I'm going to jump into our presentation for tonight. So we're looking at rezoning for 24/7 fitness, a conditional rezoning at 301 Jones Street and 108 Pierces Road. So these following standards are for any conditional rezoning that goes in front of the town. The conditional rezoning and the boards that are approving the conditional rezoning or making a recommendation must keep these standards in mind. The standards are: 1, whether the proposed conditional rezoning advances the public's health, safety, or welfare. 2, whether the extent to which the proposed conditional rezoning is appropriate for its proposed location and is consistent with the proposed goals, objectives, and policies of the town's adopted policy guidance. 3, whether an approval of the conditional rezoning is reasonable and within the public's interest. 4, whether the extent to which the concept plan associated with the conditional rezoning is consistent with the ordinance. And finally, any other factors as the Board of Commissioners may determine to be relevant. So the following request has been made: a conditional rezoning for a R2 property to become a general commercial conditional for the use of gym and other retail uses. Property is located between Pierces and Jones Street, with its main access being off of Jones Street, right across the street off of Pierce's from the Sheets. So it's a little bit odd because it is between those two streets, but that's to kind of help you contextualize. But if you have any questions about location, feel free to ask. The applicant is O'Kane and Associates. The property owner is CP Enterprises of North Carolina, LLC. The property address is 108 Pierces Road and 301 Jones Street. The acreage is 1.915 acres. The current zoning is residential suburban, and the proposed zoning is general commercial conditional. The public hearing notifications have been sent out. The public hearing notice signs were posted. The mailed notices were mailed to all property owners within 750 feet. The notice was posted in the paper of general circulation 2 times in the Wake Weekly. It was also posted on the town's website and as well was sent out with email within the email notification list. If you are interested in learning more about developments that are coming into Zebulon, the email notification list is a great place to start. Feel free to sign up for that email list on the town's website. The current zoning for this property is R2, as I have previously stated, but I do want to point out that the property to the north is currently zoned office institutional, and then the properties to the south are zoned heavy commercial. So this will be a commercial use within other commercial or mixed use zoning classifications. And then the future land use for this site is suburban commercial, which is designed as a designation that involves commercial development, whether at a neighborhood-focused or larger scale, that stands apart from most auto-oriented contemporary development. The suburban character is achieved through lesser coverage of the site with buildings and especially paved areas. Preservation of trees and other natural site features, along with generous landscaping, can also move a site into the suburban range of the community character spectrum, relative to the site where the gray paved surfaces are mostly offset by the green spaces. And so with this particular site, you'll notice that it has preserved some green space as well as also having meeting our landscaping standards as well as being more pedestrian oriented rather than auto dominant. And then as well, just to the south of this property is the general commercial future land use classification, and so it will be within a commercial node. The timeline of activity for this project, the first review was submitted on 11/1/2023. The comment letter was sent out about a month later on December 5th, 2023. The first TRC meeting for this project was on 12/13/2023. The second review was submitted on 1/31/2024, January 31st, 2024, with the comment letter being sent out February 29th, 2024. And then the joint public hearing packet final submittal was submitted in March, on March 12th, 2024. The concept plan is for the proposed uses of fitness center with other retail uses. So the primary area on this site will be used for the fitness center, taking up the first floor, part of the first floor, and then the second floor of the building space, with 2 tenant spaces taking up the other part of the first floor that will be facing Jones Street. Looking at these proposed elevations, there's a couple things that I want to point out. First off, I wanted to point out that on elevation A, that will serve as the gym's primary entrance, and it will be facing the parking lot. And then elevation B will be facing Jones Street and will serve as the entrances for the 2 tenant spaces that are being proposed. Following conditions have been proposed by the applicant for this rezoning. I won't go through them on this slide, but I will kind of go in more depth as we go through the following slides and kind of talk about where they're deviating and what that might look like.
So all of these conditions are going to be covered at some point in your presentation?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So the parking lot stem length, there has been a ask for it to be reduced from the 75 feet required to the 28 feet as proposed. As well with the parking, they're asking for a deviation from the required 89 parking spaces to only provide 79 parking spaces. And so these parking spaces will include the parking spaces in the parking lot, 76 of them, and then 3 on-street parking spaces on Jones Street, which I can point out here, right here. The applicant has also asked for a reduction in the setback from the 30 feet that is required to 15 feet, as well as a modified street yard buffer to accommodate a public gathering area space to serve the future retail. This is something that helps with that pedestrian-oriented design, pulling the building a little closer to the right-of-way, as well as building that pedestrian connection from the building, having a gathering space, and then transitioning into the sidewalk. As you see with many of our projects, this project also has road improvements that they are committed to through the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. So the applicant has proposed on Pierce's Road, constructing the required additional width for the future two-lane median divided road, as well as putting in the curb, gutter, street trees, and sidewalk. Along Jones Street, the applicant has also provided that they will do the build-out to allow for a future two-lane median divided road, as well as the curb, gutter, sidewalk with the planting strip, and then those 3 parking spaces along Jones Street. As well, these are all consistent with our comprehensive transportation plan, which lays out all transportation improvements within the town. As well, the applicant has proposed, the applicant is currently working on their TIA, and the applicant has proposed that any improvements that are recommended by the TIA will be done at the time of, will be committed to being done when they go through construction drawing process. So I just wanted to mention that the TIA is still in process, but there are traffic engineers here tonight, so if you have any questions about the TIA, they are happy to answer those questions for you tonight. The utility allocation policy, as we see with all these developments that are coming in seeking water allocation, this project needs to meet the required 60 points. This project for single-use retail already starts with 40 points and then gets points in the following areas. The first area is they are providing those 3 on-street parking spaces, getting them those 3 points for those. The applicant is proposing a bioretention stormwater measure, which gets them an additional 5 points. The applicant has also proposed a building that is consistent with a pedestrian-oriented and walkable design, and a couple features that kind of lead into that are the public gathering area leading into the sidewalk, as well as the pedestrian connection from Jones Street up into Pierce's Road. As well, the applicant has provided 10 outdoor native shade trees that will be scattered throughout the site to help with that, help with enhancing the landscaping on the site. So this would lead to a total of 63 points for this project. I'm going to go through the standards one more time, and I do want to reiterate that we do find that this project meets these standards. The standards are: 1, whether the proposed conditional rezoning advances the public health, safety, or welfare; 2, whether the extent to which the proposed conditional rezoning is appropriate for its proposed location and is consistent with the proposed goals, objectives, and policies of the town's adopted policy guidance; 3, whether an approval of the conditional rezoning is reasonable and within the public's interest; 4, whether the extent to which the concept plan associated with this conditional rezoning is consistent with the ordinance; and 5, any other factors that the Board of Commissioners may deem to be relevant. At this time, staff recommends accepting public comment and referring the matter to the planning board. As well, the applicant is here and would like to say a couple words before you head into questions, if that's okay.
First of all, thank you.
Name and address, please.
Name and address.
Yes.
Curtis Jingles, Whispering Meadows Drive, Zebulon, North Carolina, 1609. So first of all, thank you for your time. The reason we are expanding, first of all, we wanted to have a facility here in Zebulon, North Carolina that could serve this community. That's the foremost thing that drove me to even putting a facility here in the first place. I wanted something that could serve the community, all aspects, young and old, rich, poor, in health, good health, bad health. We've grown this through COVID. We built this through COVID. And now it's time for us to expand. Our goal is to touch and reach this community much deeper and further. We have many more things we want to do to serve this community. And we have a lot of people passionate about it. I'm passionate about health, and I'm passionate about people making their lives better, and it also starts with good health. So thank you for your time.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yes. So we've heard from staff, and we talked in a meeting that we had together about how you wish to proceed moving forward with the plans prior to having the TIA finished. And while overall it sounds awesome that you're agreeing to make the improvements that the TIA would recommend, I'd like to hear from your traffic engineer a little bit about what the cost of some of the anticipated improvements might be, because sometimes when we move forward, say with the traffic impact analysis not being complete, there could be a large number of costs related. And so I just want to make sure that you guys have like a handle on what the potential costs could be.
Absolutely, that's a fair question.
My name's Sean Brennan with DRMP. We are going to be performing the traffic study for this site.
So it hasn't started yet?
Well, I'm sorry?
It hasn't started yet?
We have it scoped.
Oh, okay, okay.
We don't know the extent of the improvements at this time, but with it being a low trip generator, I wouldn't be anticipating a lot of off-site improvements. So I feel the risk is relatively low. To put this in perspective, when we'll have NCDOT and the town review the traffic study, and they'll be looking at how big of impact the site is having on the existing roadway network. And with us being 23 AM trips, well, that's preliminary number, and then 79 PM trips, we're gonna be just such a low percentage of traffic at off-site intersections.
So one of the concerns that I have from the site plan is that one of your entrances and exits is going to be through the Waffle House parking lot, and that's going to impact their traffic. And so do you anticipate there being any kind of mitigation or measures that are going to have to take place to make sure that it's not negatively impacting their business as well?
I can speak to that a little bit on the staff's end to why we were asking for that connection. So there's actually an existing easement on the Waffle House site for a future connection, and it actually has partial build out to allow for that future connection. And this is consistent with what we require on a lot of our commercial sites, which is connection to other future commercial properties. And so at the time when Waffle House came in, they provided that easement for that connection for future connection to this site.
Right. But we can have him answer now?
Yes, yeah, I
Okay.
just wanted to
All right,
provide
great.
some
Thank you.
clarification on why that is required.
Okay, thank you.
So I would anticipate the majority of the trips going out the main entrance onto Jones Street. With the trips being, so they're slightly more than 1 car per minute, but less than 2 cars per minute. I just don't anticipate huge negative impacts.
Can you go back to slide 17, please, Ms. Farrell? This may be a question for you, but it might not be.
Okay.
All right, so Part of what you've proposed is a modified street yard buffer, and help me make sure that I'm understanding correctly, that's going to be paved, right?
Brian O'Kane with O'Kane and Associates, 89 East Rakers Road in Washington, North Carolina. I did the site plan, so I won't make my traffic engineer represent that. Yeah, so a portion of the idea there with that modified streetscape is to make it pedestrian friendly and have users of the retail space have a gathering space in front. So yeah, and it'll be mostly hardscape. That circular portion there, we envision that as being hardscape with you know, seat walls around it, so folks that are using those retail spaces can gather out in front of the retail.
Now, is there going to be entrance? It looks like there's entrance and egress from to that area, and so help me understand the gathering space concept.
Like an outdoor dining spot, something like that. And Curtis, you maybe don't speak to that, but yeah, there's the 2 tenant spaces that could be developed as one, and they would have, you know, egress and entry on Jones Street there.
So the concept behind that is whether, once again, as Brian is alluding to, whether you have 1 or 2, people can come outside, have events. If we want to have some type of even live music or something like that, it's a spot that people can come out and have that there.
Would this opening up onto the sidewalk then, or is it opening up onto Jones Street?
It's opening up onto the sidewalk.
Okay,
Adjacent to
that's
Jones
what I
Street with-
needed clarification
Yeah.
on.
And you know, we want it to be pedestrian oriented and friendly, but also a little bit buffered as you're sitting in that space. So, you know, we're going to vegetate it where we can and have the seat walls there. So it feels like kind of part of both, part of the sidewalk infrastructure and easy access for pedestrians, but also, you know, part of the retail space.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that was part that I wasn't sure of just with how the diagram was laid out. And then, so in front of the 2 retail spaces, I believe that is elevation B, correct, that we're looking at right here? Okay,
Oh, do you want me, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. That portion is going to be sidewalk then? So it's not going to be where folks can drive up to that area and have that little concrete buffer as a place where they can maneuver their vehicle? That's all just sidewalk right in front of elevation B?
Yeah, hardscape.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Thank you so very much.
Questions for the applicant from the board? Commissioner Davis?
If you can, just for my further clarification, and I think it was on page 16, can you just help me to further understand, the applicant is asking for a deviation from, 75 foot to 28 feet for the parking lot? Can you just give me an explanation for that?
Yeah, so the couple of deviations here, I'll go into them in a little more detail. One is the reduced parking lot stem there, going from 75 to 26. You know, our thought is here that this is almost a dead-end parking lot. You know, originally, we hadn't planned to connect to Waffle House, and we've done that to accommodate staff. And the request there, you know, we don't see, obviously, through traffic turning in the main entrance there at our facility and going through to Pierce's straight. So we're hoping to get some leniency on that requirement to get a few more parking spaces close in proximity to the retail space. And, you know, that's just something that, from a marketability standpoint, you know, we'd like to have. And then as far as the 89 and 79 parking spaces, we've done a little study. The ITE puts out a parking generation manual that studies each kind of land use and how much parking is going to be required for each land use. And, you know, the Zebulon code has 1 parking space per 200 square feet for gym spaces. And I think, you know, we feel like that's a little much based off of, we've studied Curtis's numbers and the ITE manual. And I don't have my notes with me, but I think the ITE manual for this building suggests more like 60 parking space range for the gym. So, we feel like we meet that requirement. And I think some of that is driven, ITE studies data for gymnasium or fitness centers kind of in the current era, current times. And, there's a lot larger spaces. Curtis is proposing, bigger women's exercise space that's, a lot of square footage per user. So, it's going to be, more square footage than what typically occurs per user for a fitness center.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor.
Commissioner Clark,
None at this time.
Mr. Harrison. Commissioner Miles.
I'd just like for the general public just to break down ITE, so we know when you're referring to ITE, if you could break that down for us, please.
Yeah, it's basically a manual, a standard reference manual in transportation engineering that studies traffic generation as well as parking generation. So it's kind of the one regulation that we look to. And I've got the number. So if you run the ITE numbers, the gym space would require, it's basically 3.5 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. So it's almost 18,000 square feet of gym space. So that's 55 parking spaces. And that would leave us, 24 spaces for the retail, which would be well over the 1 per 200 required by the town. So that's kind of, our thoughts on, us meeting what he's going to need.
No, go ahead. It's all you.
Board staff, can you give me a better understanding? We recommended that they go through the Waffle House parking lot. Can you break that down? You may have just said it, but break
I'm
it
sorry, I can't hear you.
a bit more why staff wants to go through the Waffle House
Yeah,
parking lot,
so
please.
Commissioner Miles is asking why staff recommended that they build that connection through Waffle House. And so this kind of goes back to the Waffle House site plans. So when Waffle House had come in and developed, they provided an easement that actually led to this property, as well as providing a short stub to future extend their parking lot to allow for a connection to this site. That is consistent with any new commercial development that we have in the town of Zebulon. We encourage those connections between commercial uses to allow for a network to get through to other properties without having to go back out onto the main road. Because otherwise, if someone, let's say they just had a great workout and they want to go grab a waffle, if they were to not have that connection, they would have to go out onto Jones Street, go out onto Arundel, and then go back onto Pierce's, which actually ends up causing more traffic because you're pulling those cars onto the road rather than routing them through from one business to the other business.
So we don't think that it would affect people coming off Pierce's Road, turning there just to get to the gym. They shouldn't have a big impact, you're thinking?
We don't really determine that. I don't know what effect that this will have. We definitely do see that with things I won't tell you we don't, but the intent really is to allow people going from this business to go to the Waffle House business and give them business as well.
Thank you for answering that.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Baxter?
So how did staff come to the parking per square foot numbers for a gym-type facility? What kind of document or school of thinking was used to determine that 200 per square foot, or the 1 per 200 square foot assignment?
I'm gonna let Mike answer that question. That's something to do with our UDO, and he was here during that process, so he'll have a little better.
Yep. Thank
Good
you.
evening, Mayor, members of the board, planning board. Those numbers actually, as mentioned, were partially based on the IT trip generation manual. There's a component of it that addresses parking. Additionally, it took in consideration other similar uses within the triangle. The consultant that did our transportation plan looked at the developments that have occurred in places like Raleigh, Apex, Knightdale, throughout the entire region, corresponded them with the manual, and that's a rough estimate. Parking is not an exact calculation by any means, and that's one of the reasons that these type of processes exist, is to allow for deviations from those maximum parking requirements.
So you both used the ITE and just came up with different numbers.
Well, our number is a combination of the ITE and other parking studies that were done in the Triangle region by the consultant that wrote the UDO about 4 years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
And there is a specific section of our UDO that spells that out specifically, and it's not something that staff has the authority to deviate from.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the Board of Commissioners?
I do actually have a question.
Yes.
Not that we're expecting this to ever happen, but would we need to work with the other businesses that are close by, like the Waffle House or the Wake Med facility, if that parking lot happened to be ever full? Like one of the things you were saying is an event for the community. And if this parking lot happened to be full, would we need to work with the other local businesses for parking if people would decide to park in those other areas? Would that impact those businesses? And if so, how would we handle that?
Sure, I can, for example, I've already been in communication with the church right across the street. If we were having an event such as that, from a business owner to reaching out to those and letting them know and making sure it aligns with their schedules. So long before we came up with a date for something that we would have, that communication would go out and we would talk to our adjacent companies and businesses and making sure that they didn't have anything likewise and so on. So that's the way we do it. We actually started off talking to the church about even using some of their spaces, but they could not sign anything that was official because of some regulations going on within the church itself.
I just want to make sure we didn't need to have any kind of regulations or anything that, like I said, if it impacts other businesses. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the Board of Commissioners? Hearing none, now we will move to the Planning Board. Any questions, comments from the Planning Board? We'll start with Mr. Lowry.
So just a couple of questions and maybe just a comment, but I know you're still kind of putting together the traffic impact analysis. We have other projects that are on our planning website slated for this area, other retail businesses. And we already have major concerns at, is it Hendrick?